our channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And during this video, first of all, we're going to discuss another offensive operation that was launched by the Russian forces. And this time the Russians are trying to break through Ukrainian defense in the Zaporizhzhia direction with the purpose to establish complete control over the settlements like Kamenskaya, Novoandreevka, Orekhov itself, and Mala Takmachka. And as you can see, during the previous 12 hours, we had first changes on the ground, and according to information we have, as you can see, according to this configuration of the map, the Russians managed to improve their positions significantly in the village of Mala Takmachka. So let's discuss everything in details. This Russian offensive operation wasn't something unexpected for the Ukrainians, and most likely the Ukrainians knew 2 months ago that the Russians were planning to begin this offensive operation. If we increase the numbers of this, let's say since the beginning of the 1st of May of 2025, we're gonna find lots of very interesting geolocations and icons in this area, and probably these icons are the most important ones. For example, on the 25th of May of 2025, the Ukrainian intelligence services published this video, and in this video we can see how huge, very big Russian convoy, probably train with lots of fuel, was moving in the direction of the city by the name of Tokmak, or further through the city of Tokmak in the direction of Crimea. And the Ukrainians managed to ambush this train with fuel, most likely not just with fuel but also with ammo, with arms for the armored forces of the Russian Federation, with drones. And as a result of several drone strikes, as you can see, this train was heavily damaged and probably destroyed. So once again, this episode took place on the 25th of May of 2025, so almost 2 months ago. Another important video was published several days ago, and this is the video in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Molotchansk. And here we can see almost the same story, but this time we certainly can see a train, huge train with the weapons, with armored vehicles, with fuel. And as you can see, Ukrainians once again managed to ambush another Russian train and to destroy this train with several drone strikes. So there were hundreds of drones, most likely not just one drone, and several probably parts of the train was damaged and destroyed. So this episode took place several days ago. So summarizing everything, we see that for the first time, probably since the beginning of everything in this area, the Ukrainians began use drone massively with the purpose to destroy and to damage Russian logistic. So that's Russian logistic that can be used to supply and support the Russian forces in this area. So now let's discuss the current days, the situation by the morning of the 27th of June of 2025. And today we got another very interesting video from the city of Tokmak, also from the same area, but this time we can see the work of Russian air defense. The author of this video says that another batch of Ukrainian drones were trying to destroy another train of the armored force of the Russian Federation that most likely was trying to bring additional weapons, arms, maybe something else to the Russian forces, to the line of combat contact, but all those drones, as you can see, were brought down by the Russian air defense. So this is a third attempt from the Ukrainian side to destroy Russian logistics in this area, and obviously the purpose of these attacks, of all these attacks, was just to ruin Russian logistics and to ruin Russian plans of possible offensive operation in the direction of the cities of Orekhov and Kamenskaya. So this is about Ukrainian side. So once again, summarizing everything, the Ukrainians knew at least 2 months ago that the Russians were planning to begin something in this area. Now let's rewind the updates on the 26th of June of 2025, and if you remember, yesterday we got very interesting changes on the map that were published by pro-Ukrainian sources. According to Deep State, the Russians launched their major offensive operation in the western part of the city of Zaporizhzhia direction with the purpose to establish complete control at least over the southern part of the village of Kamenskaya. And based on the article and changes that were made according to Deep State, we adjusted our map as well. So for example, this is the situation by the end of the 25th of June of 2025, and this is the situation by the end of the 26th of June of 2025. So several square kilometers were taken by the Russians. And when talking about the beginning of this offensive operation in the Zaporizhzhia direction, we believe that this offensive operation started somewhere around 24th of June of 2025, when all these videos were published. We discussed this video also during the previous update. Once again, I would like to remind you that in this video video we can see how the Russians were basically reducing to ruins the entire Zaporizhzhia direction, and this is obviously something like an artillery preparation before the beginning of the Russian major offensive that started most likely several hours later and after these artillery strikes. So this is everything this is everything about pre-beginning of the Russian major offensive. And now let's discuss the most important updates that we got by the morning of the 27th of June of 2025. And according to information we have, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to break through Ukrainian defense to the southeast of the city of Orekhov, the key settlement in this direction, and to establish control for over more than 20 or even 30% of the settlement of Mala-Takmachka. So as you can see, we have changes on the ground. Some of them were confirmed, some of them were provided by very reliable pro-Russian resources. First, let's compare the map between the dates. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 26th of June of 2025, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 27th of June of 2025. Obviously, the Russians managed to improve their positions so significantly, not just during the previous 12 hours. We just received updates this morning, but according to several sources, once again, this Russian breakthrough started several days ago. So this is the video that was published by the Russian sources, and in this video we can see how Russians were attacking the southeastern and the eastern parts of the settlement of Mala-Takmachka. We don't see any moments, any episodes with the Russian flags, but this is very important video that the Russian government TV channel shown, and in this video we can see how exactly the Russians were breaking through Ukrainian defense. And lots of strikes, lots of artillery strikes, lots of FPV drone attacks, and in this moment we can see first Russian troops, first Russian soldiers that began entering the city of Mala-Takmachka from the southeast. So a very long video, 2 minutes and 10 seconds, lots of episodes, and the most important that one of the episodes was geolocated exactly in this point. And based on this video we have adjusted completely the southeastern part of the city of Mala-Takmachka. Furthermore, several pro-Russian resources reported that during the previous days the Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense completely. Basically, Ukrainian defense collapsed, and the Russians managed to establish complete control and physical control over the most important area of the city of Mala-Takmachka, over the entrance to the former prison. So as for now, the main target and the main value of the city of Mala-Takmachka is this small smoke facility. This is the former prison, and now the Russians are trying to establish complete control with this territory. And as you can see, as for the beginning of the 27th of June of 2025, the Russians managed to cut the main supply lines from the north and from the northwest. Obviously, the Ukrainians still have possibilities to support their forces using the, western and the southwestern roads through the three lines, but obviously this road is not so secured as the northern ones that the Russians managed to cut, and obviously we can start the counting days before the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from this area completely. So this is the situation in this area. And we will finalize our analysis about the Orekhov direction with a very interesting article that was published today by pro-Ukrainian resources, very reliable, that has millions of subscriptions, millions of subscribers. Russia will intensify its offensive on the Zaporizhzhia direction in the coming days. Significant movement of equipment and ammunition via Mariupol reported. Rostov, Novorossiysk, Mariupol, Pologi, Berdyansk direction, 7 platforms with armored vehicles, including tanks, over 40 trucks with troops and ammunition. Crimea, Kherson, Mariupol, Novoazovsk, Taganrog, Rostov, Sumy, a convoy of 20 trucks with troops, 5 tractors with BMP, with infantry fighting vehicles and fighting vehicles, class armored vehicles. Increased assault attempts here near Gulay Pole and Orekhov. So as you can see, the Russians are trying to redeploy as many as possible soldiers as soon as possible, and they want to be faster than Ukrainians, and they want to begin offensive. And during the first days, the Russians just want to get the initiative in their hands and to establish as many as control over as many as possible territories and square kilometers before the Ukrainians are able to regroup and to bring additional forces with the purpose to stabilize the situation. Furthermore, I would like to remind you that these days we were talking a lot about the village of Malinovka, and according to the latest report that we got yesterday, by the end of the 26th of June of 2025, the Russians secured around 50% of the settlement, and the Russians continue their offensive. So as we can see, most likely the Russians launched their major offensive operation of December of 2025. And according to all these updates, we believe that at the end, the Russians have their priority and their target to establish complete control over the settlements of Orekhov and Gulay-Polya, and this will allow the Russians to shorten the distance between edge positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation and the railways that go from the city of Zaporizhzhia further in the eastern direction towards the Pokrovsk and Konstantinovka and so on. So if the Russians are able to establish, let's say, FPV drone control over this territory, FPV drone control on using the drones with fiber optic, this will probably reduce Ukrainian logistic capabilities significantly. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the South Donetsk direction. If you remember, just yesterday the Russians managed to secure the village of Yalta, and this is one of the latest villages in the area between the rivers of Mokra, Yal, and Volcha. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation and different sources confirmed Russian control over these territories. We have this video with Russian flags raised over the entire settlement of Yalta, and right after the Russians finished the battle for this small village, they continued their offensive operation further in the western direction. And according to information we have, by the beginning of the 27th of June of 2025, the Russians managed to enter the village of Yalta from the northeast. So this small tree line was captured by the Russians by the beginning of the 27th of June, which means that the battle for the village of Zirka has begun. Most likely it will take up to 2 or 3 days before the Russians are able to secure this territory and to force the Ukrainians to fall back completely. So most likely by the end of the upcoming weekend, the Russians will secure the village of Zirka and the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back further in the western direction towards the settlements of Podubna and Tolstoy. At the same time, the Russians this morning and these days carry out significant and very powerful artillery preparation on the village of Mirne. For example, in this video we can see how the Russians attack maybe a warehouse or ammo depot or temporary deployment point of the armed forces of Ukraine with FABs. As a result of these strikes, or maybe it's not a FAB, maybe it's a total flamethrower system, but obviously something very heavy and something very powerful. Furthermore, we got additional video, this one, and in this video we can see how the Russians carry out artillery preparation with the use of the multiple launch rocket systems and artillery systems, lots of explosions. So based on this video we came to the conclusion that most likely the Russians will try to answer the village of Mirna exactly from the southeast, with the purpose first of all to establish a foothold, to gain a foothold in this part of the settlement, and then with the purpose to continue offensive operation further in the northern and the northwestern directions. So most likely during the next several days the clashes and the battles for the village of Mirna and Zirka are about to will start. Now let's talk about the Pokrovsk direction. During the previous 24 hours, we got additional changes on the ground. Several very reliable pro-Russian resources reported that as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to secure the tree lines to the south of the villages of Udachna and Molodetskaya. We discussed the situation many times. Almost every single day we make additional changes on the ground. The Russians are in offensive operation here, and this offensive operation started somewhere on the 20th or 22nd of June of 2025, because exactly at this moment we started making adjustments. So once again, this is the situation by the end of the 21st of June of 2025. The Russians were about to finish the battle for Novosergeyevka, and starting from that date we began adjusting the map almost every single day. One piece by another we were adding to the territories under complete Russian control, and now we can see that as a result of this major breakthrough, the Russians managed to get the villages of Udachna from the southwest and the village of Molodetskaya from the southeast. So the distances between edge Russian positions and the village of Molodetskaya is already less than 2 kilometers, and the distances between the edge Russian positions in the southwestern part of the settlement of Udachna is already less than 1 kilometer, which means that in the very near future, probably during the next several days, the Russians will make their first attempts to attack both villages with the purpose to probably cut and colder the Ukrainians in the central part of Udachna and to block the Ukrainians in the area of Molodetskaya with the purpose to cut supply and support of their contingent on the territory of Udachna itself. So here we can see another area of possible Russian breakthrough. As for the situation in the area of Konstantinovka, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the northwestern part of the settlement of Yablunovka. The Russians, as you can see, managed to shorten the distances between their edge positions and the village of Stepanovka for just 2.5 kilometers. We came to this based on the video that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and in this video you can see how Ukrainians were attacking with FPV drones Russian units exactly in these fields. So based on this video we have adjusted the map, as you can see. So this is the situation. For example, by the end of the 26th of June of 2025, most of these territories ceased to be considered as a contested area of the gray zone, and by the morning of the 27th of June, the Russians managed, as you can see, to improve their position significantly, and as you can see, the Russians continue their offensive operation. As for the Sumy direction, during the previous 24 hours, we got several interesting videos. Another video we got from the central part of the settlement of Yunakivka. Very interesting and at the same time very weird video. In this moment, for example, we can see very heavy artillery strikes on the central part of the settlement of Yunakivka. And in this video, we don't see Russian soldiers. We don't see neither the Russian soldiers or the Ukrainian soldiers. But the author of this video stated that exactly in this moment, we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russian positions in the central part of the settlement. Based on this video, we haven't adjusted anything in this area because we have some doubts whether there are Russian soldiers in this area or not, but obviously very interesting episodes, and obviously this episode confirms that currently the main clashes are taking place for the central part, and we are still waiting for more or less reliable proofs that can confirm Russian progress on the ground. As for the western flank of the Sumy direction, there are very heavy clashes. The Ukrainians from their side are trying to attack and to destroy Russian positions in the area of Kondratovka. We believe that Ukrainians are preparing themselves before the beginning of another counter-offensive operation with the purpose to force the Russians to fall back from this area. The Russians from their side continue bombing and attacking the main tree lines and roads of supply that go from the city of Sumy in the direction of the village of Andriivka that was recaptured by the Ukrainians during the previous days. So as we can see, the situation remains tense, and another important article was published today from the city of Kiev. According to information we have, the Kursk operation has turned into the Sumy operation. Now the Russian may attack Chernigov region. The Rada, the Ukraine parliament, criticized the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine. Syrsky's PR tour has angered even the Rada deputies. The trip of the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Alexander Syrsky, to the headquarters in the Sumy region has resulted in another scandal. The reason was the photos of the general against the backdrop of symbolic fortifications, several meters of wire drenched in forest belt. So according to several pro-Ukrainian sources, now the Russians can begin another offensive operation, but this time in the most northern part of Ukraine, in the area of the city of Chernigov. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel. Put your likes on my Patreon.